There are many IKEA Doritos out there that have failed the test of time and got laughed at on this channel, but only one is interesting enough to make a video about besides the last one. A Dorito that constantly got nerfed and cucked throughout time because every time they added one of these to the game, it was borderline overpowered on release. A Dorito that kept taking L's year after year since its first addition to War Thunder 5 years ago. That is, until recently when buffs, decompression, and new gameplay features were added, taking these snacks from the equivalent fun factor of sticking your balls in a deep fryer to some of the most fun planes you can fly at their BR range. That's right, scrubs, I am talking about the Draken. The Saab 35 Draken is the first of the long lineage of cracked-up Swedish Doritos and is available in various flavors in games such as spinach, strawberry, piss, pop rocks, and alcohol, which vary in their degree of hilariousness and what kind of shenanigans they can pull off at their BR. So whether you are here to actually learn how to fly these things, or just here to listen to me yap and make jokes for 40 minutes, then dabble down for the deadly Draken. Our story begins right after the end of the Second World War. Germany and Britain brought upon the aviation world the advent of the jet engine, and countries all around the world began to follow suit in developing their first jet aircraft. These planes ranged from straight gas right down to straight ass, but as with any new unproven technology, the first real jet fighters drafted were simply modifications of existing prop planes for these new countries, as with the American P-59, which was just a P-39 with jet engines, or the Soviet Yak-15, which was literally just a Yak-3 with a jet engine taped to the front where the piston engine went. Saab decided to also take the easy way out, and with their first jet aircraft, the J-21RB, it was simply just their existing J-21 propeller-powered fighter, but with a jet engine strapped to the back. The J-21, while advanced aerodynamically for its time, fell into a plethora of problems with its jet-powered variant, which you should already know about if you flew this piece of shit in War Thunder. First of all, these early jet engines were very heavy and inefficient. As a direct result, the heavy jet engine outputting the thrust of a wet fart ended up turning this plane into a flying brick. Saab cooked, and the Swedish Air Force got food poisoning. My goodness, this shit was so fire, we had to put it out. And so, in Saab's immense failure to cook, the Swedish Air Force turned to foreign export options for their next aircraft, namely the British Vampire and Hunter, renamed to the J-28 and the J-34 to supplement Saab's next pile of abysmal dogshit, the pufferfish J-29 and the goofy J-32 respectively. But, obviously, buying whatever old surplus Britain had was never intended as a real solution. Not with the new pencils that the superpowers were about to unveil. It is the late 1940s, and now with the sunlight from the dawn of the Korean War on the horizon bringing the warmth of this new Cold War, it became clear that new fighter jets had to be created, jets that could fly higher, further, and especially faster. Lockheed was in the process of developing what would become the YF-104, and the Soviets were following suit in developing the SM-9 and the YE-6, which in a few years were going to become the MiG-19 and the MiG-21 respectively. And in the IKEA workshop, Saab was also cooking up their own devious pointy triangle. The Swedish Air Force had just activated BAS-60, a network of hidden air bases and runways utilizing existing civilian highways to remain hidden and effective during wartime, where air bases would be the first target to get bombed. And as a result, the new fighter that Sweden required not only had to compete with the highly advanced F-104 and the MiG-21, but it also had to do that while being capable of operating from short highways instead of air bases. And it had to be serviced for a turnaround time of under 10 minutes by a team of small conscripts on the side of a highway. The advantages of a delta wing were definitely immense, but it still also had its own set of disadvantages. Disadvantages that were countered crudely by the Soviets simply adding a tail to their delta wing, but the Swedish were much more sophisticated. By adding another delta wing to the delta wing, creating a cranked delta, or a double delta design, the delta wing would have more delta wing per delta wing, meaning that this type of delta wing would eliminate or reduce most conventional disadvantages of the delta wing platform. A new double delta aircraft was designed, named the Saab 35, and nicknamed the Draken, to meet all those requirements, plus the initial Mach 1.5 requirement set by the Swedish Air Force. Sadly, the Swedish Air Force was not happy with Saab's previous track record of building jets that could be best described as an abysmal pile of shit, and testing new designs only for them to be absolute crap, and then they would have to run crying to the British to buy their planes instead. So, before ordering any prototypes of this new double delta aircraft, they wanted a smaller testbed mock-up first to test the double delta design and to make sure that it was not a pile of shit full of empty promises. To test the double delta design, Saab started with a scale model. And no, I don't mean those tiny scale models you put in a wind tunnel. I'm talking about the Saab 210 Lil Draken, which literally means Little Draken, also known as the single cutest military aircraft ever created. It is said that if you take care of your Lil Draken, it grows into a full-size adult Draken later on. God, I want one of these things so bad. Just look at how fucking cute it is. Anyways, the Lil Draken flew for the first time on January 21st, 1952, and to everybody's surprise, its flight performance was very exceptional. It exceeded all expectations, and the Air Force instantly ordered 3 full-scale pre-production Saab 35 Drakens to conduct further testing. The first of these Drakens, famously nicknamed Urban Red for the giant red letter U on its side, which actually stood for Utveckling, meaning development, actually lacked an afterburner. It wouldn't be until the second prototype a few months later that an afterburner was fitted, and the story goes that in 1954, during the second prototype's very first flight, the plane accidentally broke the sound barrier in a climb. Okay, let me explain how important this is. Not only is this the first supersonic Western European plane to enter service, but unlike any of the other shitty Eurotard Doritos that would enter service around this time, this one could break the sound barrier in a climb. We wouldn't see this again until the Mirage 3 a few years later. Anyways, the third prototype sought to test new technology required for the rest of the requirements set by the Swedish Air Force, such as having air-to-air missiles, an advanced navigation system, an all-weather radar system that could be operated by just the pilot without needing a second guy in the back. Anyways, unlike previous Saab aircraft, these new Drakens underwent the most vigorous testing program of any Swedish aircraft so far in history, and after a few years of back and forth, discovering how insane their flight performance was and how it exceeded all expectations, the plane was almost ready to enter service. Let me put it this way, the original design requirement asked for Mach 1.5, but this thing just kinda went Mach 2 without anyone asking, just because. Oh, and it also invented the Cobra maneuver, because why fucking not? No one else would find out about that maneuver until 2 months later, when a cracked up Syrian guy decided to fuck around and find out by not following instructions in a MiG-21 and then discovering it accidentally, but that's a story for another day. Anyways, the first variant was ordered into service as the J-35A Draken, with the J prefix standing for Jagdflygplan, or interceptor plane, less akin to the A prefix like on the A-32, standing for Attackflygplan. I'll leave it up to you to figure out what that one means. Anyways, this J-35A is the first Draken that we have in-game, so let's talk about that now.
Get up into the highest gear, shave off a couple seconds here. Rubber is burning, the wheels keep on turning, and I'm about to get excited here. Slam the brake and we're drifting clear. Time starts unwinding, the freedom is frightening. Lean back and just let it go, closer to your inner soul. Feeling the fire, the pit of desire. Lose your fear on the next break, spin it out in a fast take. Excited here. Drifting clear. Fire, desire. Next break, fast take.
The J-35A is a 9.3 Dorito and is the earliest variant of the Draken in-game. It is an old removed pack premium that was added in the same update as the first Viggen to replace the last removed pack premium back then in 2021. Rest in pepperoni, J29D pack. You were a real OG. Anyways, it was then removed in May of 2023, just a few months after it was replaced by another premium Draken. But that one has an even stupider story, so we'll get back to that thing in about 25 minutes. The J-35A now only comes back as an overpriced limited-time GE premium like once a year, around the last week of October in celebration of its first flight, and honestly, especially with the recent BR changes, it's actually worth picking up if it's around long enough to overlap with the 50% off anniversary sale in the first week of November, so you can get it for half price. Originally a 9.7 premium on release, thanks to the fact that BRs were not as horribly compressed as they are today, and because all aspect annoying undertiered subsonic shitfucks like the SC-25 and the A-10 did not exist yet in War Thunder, this thing was borderline overpowered at 9.7 back in the day. Just go watch my video from 4 years ago on this thing if you want an idea on how cracked it was. But about 6 months after it was added, we got the A-10 with AIM-9Ls at the same BR, and 6 more months after that, we got the SC-25 with R-60Ms, which made playing a Draken with no flares, or really any plane with no flares, about as fun as dipping your balls in sulfuric acid. This thing would remain a pain train until a few years later, suffering from various flight model nerfs and power creep additions, until very recently, where a string of buffs, new features, and recent BR changes has saved the Draken just before I started work on this video. At 9.3 today, this thing, when played right, hits harder than a freight train and claps cheeks harder than a muscular man doing 20 years after his friend drops the soap. You are supersonic. You turn on a dime with 5 Swedish krona of change, and you get 4 missiles. Now let's talk about the few disadvantages this thing has that keep it from being the most overpowered plane at this BR. First of all, you are a short back Draken. Basically, this means that you have the shorter tail due to having the weaker, earlier engines. Later Drakens with a larger afterburner will have a longer tail, so due to having less thrust than the later Drakens, this thing is pretty sluggish, especially at low speeds. The Draken's wing profile makes it turn well, but at the cost of bleeding speed easily, just like other Delta Wings, and due to the weak engine, recovering that speed takes quite a while. This issue is further amplified by the fact that you have no flares, making defensive flying in this thing a strategic game of chess where you must watch your energy state and speed at all times to make sure you don't get caught lacking by the nearest enemy missile. In turn, this results in the Draken being a very easy plane to learn, but a very hard one to master, as it requires advanced understanding of the law of conservation of energy and how it applies to Delta Wing jet aircraft. which is completely different than how it did back in prop planes. The Draken A is the definition of high skill, high risk, high reward, because if you push this thing just slightly past its envelope of performance, you'll end up near stalling speed, hoping your afterburner fixes that issue quickly. Sadly, the 12 incoming enemy missiles are much quicker. And for the other major disadvantage that Draken has that turns noobs away, it's the weapons. Yeah, okay, you get 4 AIM-9Bs, which are not great, but let's be real here, at 9.3, they're honestly not that bad either. The main troublemaker is your guns. You get 2 Akan M55 cannons, which, if you remember from last video, are just Swedish redesignated Aiden cannons like those on the Harrier. And if we learned anything from the Viggen or the Harrier video, it's that these cannons are defined by 5 things that they lack. They have basically no muzzle velocity. They have basically no damage and spark 102% of the time, with a 2% margin of error on that statistic. They have no real rate of fire either, so they are slow as shit. They have no accuracy, so they have some insane bullet spread. And this results in the last thing which they lack, which is kills. Yet you're not getting any kills with these, unless you get lucky. Now, on the Draken. This problem is made even worse by the addition of 2 more negative variables. The first is that the guns are on the outer part of the wing group, past the intake. On a wide airframe like the Draken, where 90% of your plane is wings, this means that the guns are stupidly far apart, making aiming these things even harder than normal. And on top of that, the Draken, in its design criteria of being a light and fast interceptor, has basically no fucking ammo. You miss your first strafe and boom, that's like a third of your ammo gone, good luck. It doesn't help that these guys used to have tracers in game, but Gaijin removed them because Sweden didn't use tracer belts on this thing in real life. Gee, Gaijin, I wonder why Sweden didn't use tracers on this thing. Surely it's not because the Draken was one of the first planes with a radar lead gun sight that told you where to aim, right, Gaijin? Surely you modeled this feature after 5 fucking years of bug reports, right? No, of course they fucking didn't. After 3 years of non-stop cope from the forums, Reddit, Discord, VK, wherever the fuck you can even think, Gaijin, instead of modeling the radar lead gun sight, they just added back the fictional tracers again. Yippee! Another funny thing Gaijin modeled wrong is the radar, since the J-35A had the much worse PS-02 radar in real life. Not the PS-03 it gets in-game, but don't tell this to Gaijin. As for the other funny mechanics Gaijin failed to model, there was this one that the Draken didn't have for years until literally like 2 weeks ago, as I was working on this video. Yeah, this is the AOA limiter switch, and it kinda, yeah, just don't touch this if you don't know what you're doing, please. So, to reiterate on how to play this thing, play it as an aggressive fighter while also watching your positioning and speed at all times. The second you fuck up either of those, you will find a missile up your ass that you can't evade because you have no flares. But once you pin down proper defensive flying in this thing, you can absolutely rape the enemy planes at your BR. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. This thing is 9.3. You know what else is 9.3 that we called overpowered on this channel? The MiG-19 and the F-104. If you watched any of my previous videos, you already know where this is going. At 9.3, you get constant down tiers to face 8.7 and 8.3 horde of premium subsonic shitters, especially those of the squadron vehicle variety. F-117 players in shambles when the superior triangle pulls up. This thing against a subsonic plane, well, you pull more AOA, you go faster, you shot on them harder, making it nearly impossible to counter the Draken. Unless you face a MiG-19 or an F-104, which are even more overpowered, you are basically unstoppable at this BR. Like really, the F-104 can just run away, and the MiG-19 has some of the best energy retention of this entire tier of jets, and if there's 2 things that the Draken A struggles at, it's the abysmal acceleration and the doo-doo energy retention. There is practically nothing a Saber or a MiG-15, however, can do against a Draken player with more than 2 brain cells, and in this vein, I think it is funny how this thing is still 9.3. I mean, come on, it's not like it's better in literally every single fucking way except acceleration than the other planes at 9.3, right? Oh, who am I kidding? This thing has suffered for years now, and it's back in the spotlight to shine by crapping all over the subsonic jets. My honest Saab reaction to watching the literal World War II plane face a Draken. Wait, no, I didn't say Saab reaction, I said Saab reaction.
it up into the highest gear. Shave off with the second tier. Rubber is burning, the wheels keep on turning, and I'm about to get excited here. Slam the brake and we're drifting clear. Time starts unwinding, the freedom is frightening. Lean back and just let it roll closer to your inner soul. Feeling the fire, the pit of desire. Lose your fear on the next break. Spin it out on a fast take. Excited here. Drifting clear. Fire, desire. Next break, fast take.
It's what I always It has me drifting into you. Gonna follow through. With both hands on the wheel. Drifting into you.
I'm over here flying my Draken. I got aim 9Ps on my Draken right now. I'm just yanking my stick. I'm pulling a Cobra, man. Oh, fuck, I'm stalling.
They call me 007. 0.
Laws of physics obeyed.
0.
Fucks given about your turn rate.
7.
Ace combat maneuvers before I crashed.
Okay, so the J-35A, nicknamed Adam by the Swedish pilots, was cool and all, but that weak-ass engine was its main problem. To fix this issue, a new variant was devised, where the EBK-65 afterburner was replaced by the much larger and more powerful EBK-66, outputting noticeably more thrust. This new afterburner, however, was quite larger and just wouldn't fit in the plane, requiring a full redesign of the tail section to lengthen it and add an extra set of landing gear on the back to avoid tail striking that massive dump truck. As a result, the two variants received the redesignations of J35A1 for the older, short version that we have in game, and the J35A2 for the longer version with the new afterburner. These variants also received affectionate nicknames from the pilots in the form of the Adam Kort, meaning short, and the Adam Long. Take a fucking guess what that one means. The next variant was the Bertil, or J35B. This was intended as avionics upgrade over the J35A, with upgrades such as replacing the French Irano RA423 radar, redesignated PS02A, with a newer, indigenous PS03 radar. However, major delays in electronics manufacturing resulted in this plane being split into two variants. The J35B was the later variant with all the planned avionics, but originally there was the J35B tick mark. Okay, how the fuck do you even pronounce a topographical backtick symbol? What the fuck, Saab? Oh. So it's apparently pronounced J35B Prim. And the little backtick is literally the fucking prime number symbol. Yeah, no, this takes the cake for the world's dumbest designation, and that's really saying something after making 2 videos on Swedish shit now. Anyways, this was just a J35B, but with an old radar and an old Ferranti gyro gun sight taken straight from the trash can, after Saab went dumpster diving and pulled these out of old scrapped J29s in the scrapyard. I am not making this up. Next up came the Caesar, or SK-35C. This was a twin-seater variant that lacked any and all armament, but with 2 footnotes. The first is that the second cockpit and avionics changes were very minimal, and could easily be converted back into a combat-ready J-35A in about a day if necessary. The second was, well, technically none of the SK-35Cs were armed. The first SK-35 prototype was technically armed, as it was used to test the brand new RB-05 missile. And then comes the variant that we are all here for, David. David is a nice lad dressed in yellow who can maneuver twice as fast as everything around him. The J-35D was actually called the J-35B2 at first, but the J-35 topographical backdeck was already stupid enough, so they wanted to get rid of the B entirely. The J-35D was going to be a major upgrade over the older Drakens, with the first of the upgrades being a new and more powerful Volvo RM6C engine with the EBK67 afterburner, replacing the old RM6B with the EBK66 from the J-35B. On top of that, the David was also supposed to get a new upgraded PS-03A radar and the S-7A2 radar lead gun sight. The aircraft's ILS and nav system were also updated to be compatible with the new Strel 60 system, the Swedish Air Force highway airbase network that replaced the older Bas 60 that we talked about earlier. This all was quite advanced, and since it's Saab that we're fucking talking about, well, no, they didn't learn from their mistakes. Just like the J-35B, the J-35D was so advanced that the electronics faced various delays. So just like the J-35B, the J-35D was also split into 2 variants. The J-35D1 variant was, once again, the shitty Ferranti gun sights taken from old J-29s from the scrapyard, just like the J-35 topographical backdeck had, and the J-35D2 was the actual planned variant. Even the sweetards eventually realized how stupid this is and just renamed both of the variants to J-35D, which is the next Draken that we have in-game, so let's talk about that now. The J-35D is a 10.0 kite available in multiple flavors including guacamole, banana, concrete, donut mercenary legion, and the red one. No, like, that's literally the name of the skin, I'm not even trying to be funny right now.
Fill her up, please.
What'll it be, fellas? Mustard or ketchup?
They laughing at us?
No, Patrick. They're laughing next to us.
Where are you 2 dumb kids headed anyway?
This Draken brings a plethora of upgrades to the cracked up IKEA triangle formula, including a much better engine and much better missiles, mitigating the 2 largest issues that J-35A had. This thing was added at 10.0 back in the day, went up to 10.3 sometime after, where it ended up facing the Tomcat, which was 11.3 back then for some fucking reason, and you tell me how fair it is for a plane with literally no RWR to be facing Phoenixes. God gives his strongest battles to his gayest Swedish twinks, so shortly after that, the J-35D went up to 10.7 for some reason, where for a very brief moment, on the Apex Predators dev server, it almost faced R-73s and R-27s, with no flares or an RWR. But that didn't happen because someone coped the R-73s on the new MiG-29 out of existence before the dev server was even over. And get this, throughout all this time, Gaijin refused to add the radar lead gun sight this plane had. Or the flares it tested in real life. Yes, a single J-35D tested flares in real life, making a J-35D with flares much more real than an F-5C with flares, you know, for example. Oh, and on top of all that, this thing went through like, oh, I don't fucking know, 3 different flight model nerfs, taking it from the single best dogfighter in War Thunder top tier to a literal fucking joke. However, this final oopsie was recently rectified, with the addition of the AOA limiter switch, which allows you to pull stupid amounts of nose authority right out of your ass. Or just stall out and bin it into the dirt harder than a Swedish driver when he gets into an F1 car. But besides that, this Draken, despite being at a higher BR, plays quite nicely due to its many upgrades. The new engine helps mitigate the energy and acceleration issue quite a bit, and the new RB-24J missiles, which are Swedish redesignated AIM-9Ps, are a major upgrade over the older AIM-9Bs that J-35A got. Sadly, with great upgrades comes great responsibilities, and unfortunately, at this BR, not only do you constantly face the all-aspect 30G deleters while not having flares, but be prepared to face radar missile slingers of various types, when you don't even have an RWR on this thing. Hey, at least this isn't last year when this thing could face the Tomcat for some fucking reason. You try dodging Phoenixes with no RWR and no chaff at all, let's see how that goes. Yeah, this thing at one point in War Thunder history was the single best dogfighter at top tier, and it fell off since then into the equivalent fun factor of running over your small toe with a steamroller. But now, all these years later, and after a few flight model revisions and a bit of BR decompression, the Draken might just be the single most fun 10.0 you can fly in air battles today. Great speed, maneuverability, decent missiles, it gets a bit of everything. Except flares, we don't talk about those. But where we are going, we won't be needing flares, because those subsonic premium shitters at our BR are going to be spoon-fed our IKEA meatballs. What's an A10 gonna do? Go vertical at Mach 1 with me? Come on, man. I mean, seriously, the J35D feasts on the retardation of wallet warriors at this tier, and in this light, it presents itself as one of the best hidden gems of this battle rating. It's not an easy plane to learn, but holy shit is it one of the most fun ones to fly once you do. This plane takes the high-risk, high-rewards playstyle and blows it out of the water into a playstyle so strategically convoluted, you might think you are playing Star Sector instead. As long as you watch your speed and ammunition in this plane, you'll have no trouble raping the enemy team 6 ways from Sunday. Sweden leads the world in rape statistics, and this plane might just be the reason for that, thanks to what it does to poor wallet warriors who decide to turn fight it with no support. Not even the Crusader is safe. I guess when I play this thing, you can even say, I'm Draken my nuts, across the enemy's face. The J35XS is a 10.3 premium that was added in the same update that added the second vegan, intended to replace the last removed pack premium back then in 2022. Rest in pepperoni, J35A pack, you were a real OG. Anyways, it was then removed in May of 2025, just a few months after it was replaced by a premium vegan that's painful to play, and I already made a video on the... wait a fucking second. You know, if I had $1 for every premium Draken that was borderline overpowered on release, then nerfed into the ground a few months later, then proceeded to take major L's and flight performance nerfs, power creep, and BR compression over the next few years until it suddenly became good again right before I started work on this video thanks to the AOA limiter switch, flight model buffs, and BR decompression, I would have $2, which isn't much, but it's really fucking stupid how Gaijin did this shit twice. You would really think they learned after the first fucking time, huh? Anyways, the Draken was a very popular export option in Europe, although in reality, this option was never picked. And this was the Saab Dorito that started the long history of being the laughingstock of the export market. There was the Saab 35H, standing for Helvetica, for Switzerland. They chose the Mirage 3 instead. Then there was the Saab 35X, which was a very stupid way of saying X, poor. Get it? Yeah, this variant was offered to Belgium, Argentina, Chile, Singapore, Tunisia, Malaysia, and Venezuela. Exactly none of these countries bought the export Draken. Then you have the Saab 35XD, which, despite what you're thinking, no, does not have cringy teenager shows on the MFD. Instead, it stands for Export Denmark. This one was actually chosen over the Mirage 3 and the F5 for some reason, and Denmark ended up buying 3 variants of this thing: the RF35, the TF35, and the F-35, not to be confused with the F-35. This prime fighter interceptor, when exported to Denmark, was used as a bomber for some reason. Venezuela once again was pitched the idea of the Saab 35X, this time in the form of the upgraded Saab 35XV. This was very quickly rejected once again. And finally, the last 2 export bids, which, surprisingly, were both a success. The first was the Austrian Saab 35 and the latter was the J35XS, or Export Suomi, a special variant sold to Finland. This is the last Draken we have in-game as of this video, so let's talk about that now. This was based on the J35F, a heavily upgraded variant of the J35D that we already talked about, incorporating various new systems, such as a proper flare dispenser, an infrared search and track system, 2 more missile hardpoints, special wiring allowing leftover Soviet missiles from Finnish stockpiles to be used, and a CW illuminator in the radar, allowing this aircraft to carry semi-active radar-guided missiles, at the cost of having one of its guns removed to fit the extra electronics. Surely Gaijin has modeled these unique changes and lets this plane carry its semi-active radar missiles and its Soviet IR missiles, right? No, it's just a J35D with flares and 2 more missiles and IRST at a slightly higher BR. It's $70 for some reason. It should be pointed out that at this BR in a full up tier, you can face some seriously annoying things for the Draken to deal with, and the J35XS takes a lot more discipline than the J35D to play just because of this. You also lose one of your 2 guns to fit the avionics required for guiding the RB-27 radar-guided missile, which you don't even get in-game, because Gaijin is fucking lazy. This means that your problem of having low ammo and horribly off-center guns being hard to aim is made even worse. At least that's somewhat rectified by having 2 more Sidewinders, meaning your kill potential should be about the same, if not higher, than the earlier model Drakens. However, one must remember the main problem of the J35XS, the fact that it costs $70 fucking dollars. Don't get me wrong, on sale, it's pretty worth it for half that price, but other than that, honestly, I personally pass on this thing. The only people I know who bought this shit at full price were people who wanted it back when it was great on release, or people from the great country of Finland. This isn't a joke, by the way. To play this thing, your squad must be full of Finnish people. I am not making this up. As a matter of fact, half of the footage for this thing sounded something like this.
Hui saatana, ei tohon vähän soihdutin, että ei mitään vaikutusta, mutta on niinku 2 metrin päästä.
Joo. Jape, sulla on 5 konetta perässä.
Joo, me tiedän.
Got half the enemy team over here.
Juu, tiedossa on.
Joo, me huomattiin, mä yritän auttaa. Mutta
yeah, but like, also have wing.
No kyllä sä pärjät sillä.
Ei se oo paha tilanne. Toi vesi on lähes.
Mä tain kuolla.
No toi meni vähän perseelleen.
Yeah, I can see why Kimi Räikkönen was having communication issues with his race engineers over the radio.
Hey, it's so f***ing late now, f***'s sake. Copy. Okay, no, wait, it was a good f***ing thing to come in.
Okay, it's okay, Kimi.
But regardless of the language barrier, the J35XS can also speak the one language that is universally understood. Violence. By beating the ass of all the other wallet warriors at this BR using our superior cracked up triangle that runs on Ovituplapuki, one can truly peek into the true Finland bias experience. When flying this thing, one must remember that inside of you, there are two people. One of them is called Mika and flies like crazy, and the other is called Mika and flies like crazy. Holy shit, guys, I think I might be finished.
Kauniina muistona Karjala maa, mutta vieläkin sieltä se soimattaa. Kun soittaja sormista kuulossaa, Säkkijärven polkkaa. Se polkkata sen meitä mieleen tuo, ja se autolla kaivaa rintaan. Ei soittaja haitri soita sua, Säkkijärven polkkaa. Kun rekkan rannat on jäädetään, niin vielä se kulkija lohtunsa. Kun kuuntelee soittoa kaihoisaa, Säkkijärven polkkaa. Se polkkaa vain mutta sellainen, että tielle se johtani muistojen. Kun soittona Karjalan kaunoisen, Säkkijärven polkkaa.
Okay, let's spade your Drakens now. Or I should say, Draken. Singular. Because 2 out of the 3 Drakens in this game come spaded already for the pay-to-win scrub lords out there. As for the J35D, start with M56D rockets, which you need to get the good air-to-air missiles later. Then get Compressor and M57 rockets, before going straight for the G-Suit, RB-24, and Wings Repair, to unlock the final rank where you will instantly start on the RB-24J, engine, cover, and the rest of the performance modifications. Make sure to also get the EFS because the Draken has no tail, meaning that you physically cannot lose tail control in an engine fire, making this thing surprisingly very survivable. You have no idea how many times I've brought this thing back to base with like 1 wing, or actually no wings, 1 time, but that's a story for another day. And there you have it! You have spaded your one singular Draken that isn't a premium. Yippee, I guess. And so, our second journey through the IKEA store comes to an end. You can watch the first one up here if you missed it, by the way. The Draken truly was an aircraft far ahead of its time, and in its highly advanced design and technology came some of its shortcomings. Shortcomings that would be fixed in the future, as Saab learned from their mistakes and refined the long and rich lineage of Swedish Delta Doritos. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, it means a lot to me. And don't forget to join our Discord server to vote on what family of planes I should cover next on this channel. Now we wait for Gaijin to make this video outdated next update by adding an Austrian J35U as an event or squadron vehicle, or something. Or maybe that damn J35J that's been sitting in the files for the past few years ever since the data mine 3 years ago. But until that happens, go out there, don't crash on takeoff, and go show those pesky wallet warriors what the canonical starter plane from Ace Combat Zero can do. See ya next time.